The Department of Public Health and Human Services is pleased to bring you Aging Horizons. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, fraud, legal issues, veterans benefits, and caregiving. Aging Horizons is a program dedicated to inform and prepare Montanans on these timely issues, making a difference to you and your loved ones. Here now is today's program host.
Welcome to Aging Horizons. On today's show, we're coming to you from the 51st Governor's Conference on Aging down here in Billings. And one of the excellent speakers that we have will be talking about community, communications, and culture. You have all those. Maybe you're not aware of them. Maybe you are. Maybe you can improve on some of those aspects of communication. Talk about that and so much more. Stay tuned.
If you give or receive care, you already know that it can cause stress on caregiver and receiver alike. The good news is, if you have limited resources, help is available. The Montana Lifespan Respite Program may be able to help you pay for care while you take a break. Even better news is how easy it is to apply. You can get an application online or have one sent to you. We'll get back to you within 5 working days. Respite for caregivers. It's okay to need it. It's okay to want it. It's okay to get it.
Out here, we love our animals, from the wildlife to the livestock. Inside, it's the same. They're just like family. We keep them happy and healthy, most of the time. Secondhand smoke puts pets at risk for cancer, feline lymphoma, vomiting, increases the risk of tumors and lung cancer, even causes eye and skin disease. Secondhand smoke puts your pet's life at risk.
Seems like the power bills just get higher and higher every year. I'm on a fixed income and it just doesn't keep up. I hate to do it, but sometimes I have to choose between my meds and staying warm.
No one should ever have to choose between staying well and staying warm. If you need help paying your heating bills, call us today to find out if you qualify. Help is available for both homeowners and renters.
The cold gets into your bones and you can't get it out.
Elder abuse is a growing problem, and it's happening right here in our Montana communities. At least 1 in 10 older adults are victims of physical or emotional abuse, financial exploitation, or neglect. To get help or report elder abuse, call your local area agency on aging or Adult Protective Services at 1-844-277-9300.
Welcome to Aging Horizons, brought to you by the Department of Public Health and Human Services. I'm your host, Brian Lamore. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be talking about community, communications, and culture. And we have a wonderful guest here that is presenting at the 51st Governor's Conference on Aging, Dr. Jeff Sanders. And Jeff, how did you get into all this?
Well, that's a good question. It started a long time ago. And actually, I've been an educator my whole life. And one of the curious factoids right away is I have taught every grade from kindergarten to postdoctoral students.
Oh, that's great.
And I think I got into this. I started as an earth science teacher in middle school a long time ago, met my midlife crisis and went back to graduate school again. But one of those years I took 14 months and traveled with my closest friend. We traveled through Mexico, Central and South America. And that really got me involved with indigenous people, experiential education, and on the road, seeing how people lived in their communities. They had much less physical wealth than we have in this country, but they had great cultural wealth. And when I went back to graduate school in Native American Studies, and found a way up here in Billings, and it turned out to be a wonderful experience for me. Part of the whole essence of being an educator is being a communicator. And effective communication means learning about your customers, your clients, your patients, whoever it is that you may be working with or dealing with or serving. So I adapted communication styles as part of my style when I do these presentations and workshops around the state and the region. It's important to know who your audience is, what they want to hear from you, and not what you want to tell them, but how can you best give them some content with some motivation. And I think part of the motivation comes from you, the presenter, learning about your audience and or their culture. Learning things about the language, their history. And of course with American Indians here in Montana, there's a whole wealth of information, a whole wealth of history, of culture, of dynamics of people living in their societies for millennia. Most do not know this. Montana was the first state in the nation to actually constitutional mandate Indian education for all. And I'm so proud of that, because every student in the university who wants to become a certified teacher must take at least 2 courses in Native American studies, and within his or her yearly curriculum include an authentic American Indian lesson plan. And early on, the governors here developed money and brought in cultural experts from each of the reservations, elders who talked about what is important to them and what is important that people who are working with them should know. So I'm so proud of Montana and the Indian Ed for All Act. It's and their website, montana.gov, is one of the best. It's a shining light around the nation for people. If I am a 4th grade music teacher, I can go on this website and pull up a lesson plan for 4th grade music based on a tribe in Montana. That's how wonderful this website is. So I got involved in this early at the university level because I was a teacher before. One of the first things I told my students in a semester is, I am a professor, but I'm also a real teacher. My master's is in secondary education, and so I've always loved education and always known the importance of, again, a presenter knowing the information but also motivating the students, motivating your audience. And so today when I was asked to do this presentation, I thought, well, if we just go through a story of the great depth of history of just the Montana tribes, that's going to be giving people fish, which are important. I wanted to give them the fish hook. About how to be effective communicators, and then also learning how to find information about their tribe, what their legislative districts are, the horrible history of the forced Indian boarding school system, and how that has influenced post-traumatic stress and transgenerational trauma across generations for so many. So when we're dealing with elders here, I thought, well, how can I incorporate the little I know about elders, although I am one, meaning the experiences that they have had when these folks were young. It was illegal in Montana to practice their religion, speak their language, have open ceremonies. That didn't become illegal until 1934. And a lot of these folks were born before 1934 and learned their history, their culture, their stories from their grandmas and grandpas. And they have this wealth of information. And we know that every time an elder dies, a library is burned. And so to get the folks here today who have seen the progress in the state, and again, I'm so proud that we now include mandatorily as a constitutional requirement to teach authentic American Indian education and culture in every class every year.
Every year. Well, it's interesting. You've traveled 40 different countries. You've learned so many cultures, and we have 7 tribes in Montana. Each has a different
well, I don't mean to interrupt, Ron, but there are 7 reservations. There are now 11 tribes.
Oh, 11
and
tribes.
with the Little Shell just being formally recognized now, so we have 12, along with the Métis, who are non-recognized, but an indigenous group of blending European and Native culture. So not personal, but yeah, we realize that the 7 reservations have more than one tribe on them, like the Blackfeet, just the Blackfeet. Salish, Kootenai, Flathead have Salish, Kootenai, and Pend Oreille, three different tribes. And that's all information that hadn't been included in an earlier curriculum, which is included now. So we have more information.
More information. That's great. Well, now, Jeff, unfortunately, we're drawing to a quick close on this segment. We got 2 more to go.
Okay, thank you. Nice to be here.
No, you're going to be here the next 2. So for our viewers, we're going to be back in just a few moments. We'll talk more about the cultures that are in Montana, the 11 tribes that we have, and how maybe we can, how you consolidated their culture to teach that to the majority culture. We need to expand the understanding of what we have, how we communicate. Communication is everything, how we work with each other, and we have to maybe alter some of those things to be better communicators. We'll talk about that and so much more in the next segment.
I was angry and upset when the doctor told me I have diabetes. I just didn't want to deal with it, the needles and the diet restrictions. But after I started to learn about it, those feelings changed. I was at risk for a heart attack caused by high blood sugar. That got my attention. I started watching my diet and making sure I got enough exercise every day. I want to be around for my grandkids, and now that I know what to do, it seems like a small price to pay.
Ask your doctor about diabetes education or visit montana211.org.
I had a terrible fall in December, and I put a hole in my wall. I hit it with my head, and it really, really scared me. The Stepping On program gave me confidence. We had a physical therapist come. He gave me specific exercises to strengthen my legs. I think that a lot of people in Montana need to take this program. We all think that we get to a certain age, you hit 60, and we expect to fall. You don't have to.
When I stopped showing up, Jim showed up at my door. He took me to the hospital in town to get me help. That's the day Jim saved my life.
Everyone has a role to play in preventing suicide. Know the signs and don't be afraid to speak up. If someone you know is in crisis or emotional distress, the only wrong thing to say is nothing at all. Call 800-273-TALK or text MT to 741-741.
When I first got here, I was struggling. No money, sleeping on the living room floor of a friend's apartment.
Diana Johnson, Energy Share Coordinator.
I know what it's like to need a hand. Now that I work with Energy Share, I help people pay their winter heating bills. I don't care if you're a veteran, a senior citizen, have a family, or are single. Energy Share is here to help.
If you need help paying your power bills, call or visit Energy Share, helping Montana families get through the winter since 1984. Welcome back to Aging Horizons. I'm Brian Lamore, your host, and we're continuing our discussion about culture, community, and communications with Dr. Jeff Sanders. And Jeff, we have a majority population here. Why don't they know more about our Native American populations?
Well, in general, throughout the nation, and particularly also in Montana for so long, the joke was history was written by white dead men, old historians who wrote from their perspective.
Yes.
And most history is written by the winners.
Yes.
And more is coming out from other societies, other cultures about our perspective, our point of view was also important. It's happening with African Americans, Hispanics in this country, and certainly Native Americans were here first.
Yeah.
And so, as I mentioned previously, Montana is the only state that requires Indian education for all in the public schools. One of the reasons we don't know very much is it wasn't written, it wasn't available, they didn't have the technology. Most history books, U.S. history books, started with Columbus discovered America, there were some people here, and then the next thing you knew about the Battle of Little Bighorn and nothing else. Nowadays, with so many more American Indians having higher education degrees, being phenomenal educators themselves, with the new technologies that are available. For instance, I can pull up on my smartphone an app that can teach me Blackfeet, Crow, Assiniboine, Lakota. Any one of the 12 tribes in the state will have an app for their language. The question you asked is why do we know so little? It wasn't available. Teachers weren't prepared in their, in their licensure programs to include Native American history, culture, studies. And again, I'm repeating, but we did this in 1999. 2001 was the first time actually some money was put forth. Montana rewrote their constitution in 1972, and Article 10 in that says we shall value, basically it says we're going to value and acknowledge Native Americans and teach about them in an authentic way. Authentic way means not having other cultures write about them, bringing in their elders, their stories. And it took years and years to bring in elders from the different tribes in Montana and collect their stories. And now that's part of the essential understandings that every school student will have to know here in the state. So one of the reasons we didn't know it wasn't there. Yeah. And it takes time to educate a whole cohort, really a whole generation of teachers. When I was at the university, the largest population in my classes were education majors. They had to take Intro to Native American Studies. Then I also taught a variety of other courses, contemporary issues in Native American Studies, Native Americans and the environment, talking about ethnobotany. How did people heal themselves years ago? What were the plants, the customs, the ceremonies that were used to heal? People have always gotten sick, and people who lived in that culture area knew the plants, knew the animals, knew what worked, combining their people's will to get well and the belief in their recovery system. And their recovery system often had a lot of real ethnobotanical, we call it phytochemical, naturopathic healing. That's getting greater license today. It's getting greater traction for other people to not just put it aside as old folk medicine. This stuff really works. So again, there's many more teachers coming into the system that have a background in Indian Ed, and they're excited. They'd like to learn something and present a new lesson plan. And what I did over the many years I was at the university, I led workshops around the state to teach teachers how to find the information, the authentic information, to bring in Native scholars, Native elders, have them present for you. Best thing we have is something called a Class 7 license in Montana, which is you can bring in an American Indian elder who's been certified by his or her tribe to teach the class about their culture. How better to learn about your culture than from someone who looks like you, talks like you, may tell you a story in your own language. So Class 7 teachers in Montana are often brought into the classroom, and they're a wonderful resource. And they're an elder population. And so, particularly for this conference on aging, particularly important to recognize the elders. In Native culture, in the United States culture today, we're more present-oriented and future. Native populations were more present and past-oriented. Bringing an elder to tell their story, there's nothing better.
Yeah. Were you able to record many of those stories? Do you have an archive of them?
That would be up to the presenter if he or she felt comfortable being recorded, and it would be up to the teacher to ask that elder if it would be okay to record. So all of that becomes individual, built on trust, building up relationships, and that happens over time.
Okay. Well, now you started in 1999 and now it's 2019. Have you seen a change in the majority culture because of these teachings? Have we moved a little bit?
I think so. I've seen it in my students. At first they were a little bit resistant, hesitant to, why do we have to learn this? And now they know, 20 years later, incoming students know that's part of the curriculum and they're looking forward to it.
Okay, and it helps, help us, when we better understand the Native culture, we're probably more accepting of it, right?
Well, not just accepting, but a deeper understanding and appreciation. I would use the term appreciating, knowing, because that will build up trusting relationship, the knowledge that the great information that they have about culture, history, and what's gone on there. So it does give much greater appreciation when you know something about another culture.
Another culture, yeah, it makes you better person, and you probably reflect that in your own family and your interactions with business people. And
well, I would hope so. Family will leave out. I'm not sure. But professionally, I'm okay.
Okay, that's great. Well, we're going to continue our discussion in our third segment, which will start in just a few minutes. Stay tuned.
Did you just text me?
I didn't want to disturb you if you were sleeping.
Sleeping? I'm sitting right next to you, silly.
There you are. Hey, I found a couple of Medicare helping programs online that I think we ought to look into.
It says if we qualify, we can get help paying for our prescription drugs. Oh, and there's a program that can help pay our Part B premium.
To learn more about extra help and Medicare savings programs, call your local SHIP counselor today.
Maybe I better text him.
Questions about Medicare and other types of insurance? Contact the State Health Insurance Assistance Program office to get answers to questions like, what is the difference between Medicare and Medicaid? And how do you decide if you need Medicare supplemental insurance? This insurance counseling program is not a sales program. It is available to provide answers to your insurance questions. For more information, call the State Health Insurance Assistance Program office at 1-800-332-2272.
This is Bill. He just received his new Medicare card and is following some simple rules to protect himself from fraud. He knows to never give out his Medicare, Social Security, or bank number over the phone. And this is Nancy. She knows that to detect any problems, she always reads her Medicare Summary Notice or Medicare Advantage EOB to make sure the billing is correct. Both Bill and Nancy know that anything suspicious can be reported to Montana SMP at 1-800-551-3191.
Final call from flight 566.
Hello, gentlemen. May I see your Montana Real IDs?
IDs? Why, I'm Captain Meriwether Lewis.
And I'm Captain William Clark.
Hang on, I see more than one William Clark.
It's the real me, I promise.
Discover more at mtrealid.gov. Available now.
Montana Real ID. It's the real me.
And me.
Welcome back to Aging Horizons. I'm your host, Brian Lamore, and we're continuing our discussion with Dr. Jeff Sanders about community, communications, and culture. And Jeff, when we left the last segment, I started thinking about the boarding schools which Native Americans had to go to. I imagine that really changed the culture and the ability to communicate.
Oh, yes, it did, in a very negative way, and it turned out to be in a very positive way. A short history of that is the Civil War was over. Indian wars were coming to an end. No government agency likes to work themselves out of a job or a place. And many of the forts and the barracks around the country were turned into boarding schools to keep the federal presence there. The first boarding school was started in Carlisle, Pennsylvania in 1879 by a man named Richard Pratt. He was the head of the Federal Indian Education Program. And of course, his previous job before that, he was a prison warden in Florida where the Apaches were held. And he noticed the Apaches were getting very downtrodden and depressed. Well, who wouldn't be if they're taken out of their culture, out of their homeland, and left incarcerated in northern Florida? He gave them some books, taught them how to read, and they perked up. And then he had this great eureka of, we can do that to all. We will educate natives how to read, and we'll teach them what we want them to know. And hence the off-reservation boarding school was started in 1879. Students as young as 4, 5, 7 years old were taken out into, and Carlisle was not the only boarding school. There was many around the West Coast, up into the Northwest and central part of the country. Students were taken there and many didn't return home for years at a time. At the boarding schools, if they spoke their language, they were beaten. When they arrived at the boarding schools, their native dress was taken and burned, their hair was cut, and of course for many native males, the hair is a sign of strength and power and longevity and healthiness, and their clothing was burned, their hair was stripped, they were put into dormitories, and the daily regimen was they got up in the morning, they marched to the dining halls, they marched to work, they worked half a day, they went to school for half a day, and they worked for half a day. And these children were never read a story at night. Again, some as young as 7 or 8 years old. Never read a story at night, never coddled by a grandma or grandpa. They were beaten for speaking their language. So many died. There are marked graves throughout these boarding schools where the cause of death is unknown. Yeah. And we know it was a broken heart. But what the long-term detriment to all of this is, we have a whole generation who were not parented, who didn't learn how to parent. And instead of cultural replacement, which was the idea, the goal of the Indian education program, instead of cultural replacement, it was cultural disintegration. And so many people lost their connection. Those who lived and survived when they went home, they no longer smelled the same. They no longer could speak their language. They were called the lost birds because they weren't welcomed at their home nor welcomed in the majority society. Many did go on to become administrators, teachers. There are some unintended spin-offs from the boarding school system, but the pervasive detriment, the pervasive harm of that is still across generations, causes trauma and PTSD across generations. What many people my age, your age, still living today will remember that. So it's not just in the 1800s. Yes. It went on until the 1940s and 50s that boarding schools were not places of health or places of nurturing or places of real education. However, today that's completely different. Many of the schools are still in existence, but they do have a better curriculum. What's been replaced by the tribal college system, not elementary education, but the native culture saw that education is important. However, they didn't want a dictated curriculum by the majority society. They said, we can teach our own, we can include our culture, we can include our history. And rather than have contemporaneously, rather than have students go to a majority institution, educate our own students here on the reservation. Montana is phenomenal. We have 7 reservations, 7 fully accredited tribal colleges. People can go from there into the Montana University system as a junior, not have to do their general ed requirements, and go right into their fields of specialization. The other part is that Native people were saying, yeah, we can stop the brain drain, because many students, if they did leave in modern era and go to a university system college, they often found jobs off the reservation. Part of the goal of each reservation tribal college is to stop the brain drain and to keep folks at home where they can use their expertise, use their knowledge in helping on the reservations.
Yeah. Well, now, Jeff, we're drawn to a close on the show. What are some of the final thoughts you'd like our viewers to remember about culture, communication, and the other one?
With all those communities, to work with people in communities. What I'd like people to take away is to reach a little bit out of your comfort zone. Say hi to someone you don't know. Learn a little bit of their language. Feel comfortable asking someone something about their culture in a good way. And that's the way you build up relationships. That's the way you build up trust. And that's what we can hope to do. We're all human beings. Mm-hmm. We're all here together to try to respect and know each other in a good way.
Okay, and that makes for better community, better communications, and better culture, right?
That is correct.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for presenting here at the Governor's Conference.
My pleasure. It was wonderful meeting lots of people. I had a lot of students. They're mature people now. Come on. You were my teacher in college, so it was really nice to be reacquainted with a lot of my older students.
Do you know who? We're drawing quickly to a close. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you again on another Aging Horizons.
Special thanks to the Department of Public Health and Human Services for their continued support. Hosts on Aging Horizons are program specialists at the Montana Office on Aging. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions. For more information about Aging Horizons, call the Department of Public Health and Human Services toll-free at 800-332-2272.